Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and I do want to quickly say this, that whether you like my show, or you like my guests' comics, or if you like Disney's She-Hulk, I personally don't care. You need to support what you like, otherwise it goes away. And so, whether, again, that's my stuff, my guest stuff, or Disney, I personally don't care. I don't know, obviously they want you to support their project, so they might be a little biased, but the point being made is that if you don't support it, it goes away. So that's my PSA for the day. I'm not going to bore you with my sponsors. They're in the description down below. You go check them out there. And I have with me comic creator Chuck Pineau and Shaun Barbour. So welcome back to the show, guys.
What's going on,
So glad to be here, homie.
You know, I'm always excited to have both of you on. I'm always excited to have Chuck on. I've been on Chuck's show. I don't know if, Shaun, you have a show yet. Soon, hopefully. But you got your comic going on, and I always get the name wrong, and I'm not going to attempt because it's issue 3, and you could tell me how it's pronounced because I'm going to get it wrong.
I've heard it a couple ways. It's either Belial or Belial, and I myself say Belial. So
Belial. That's how I say it.
So it's Belial, issue 3. It's the 3rd issue in case you couldn't count. But what is the basic premise of Belial that people are hearing about it for the first time? So what is the basic premise before we really dive into what's going on and where the story's gone and all that fun stuff?
My well-honed comic, there you go. My well-honed comic book or Comic Con pitch is Belial is an action comedy about the original creator of hell trying to take his domain back from Lucifer and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
There we go. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has happened in issues 1 and 2. Just to even dive a little bit further into this, obviously, Belial has sort of given up hell. He either was sort of conned out of it or he gave it up to have a good time. And then now he's had a few beers in him and he wants to take it back, or for lack of a better word. And so what is that like? Because obviously he's dealing with the 4 horsemen, he's dealing with Lucifer, and a lot of shit has happened in this. And so diving a little bit deeper into it, you know, obviously, what can people expect with the first 2 issues being out before we really dive into the 3rd issue?
I mean, with the first 2 issues, so you're right. He did, and we haven't fully given away yet how Belial lost his kingdom, which is something that you will be seeing in issue 4 because it's the last one. So that's got to happen eventually. But it's something we've slowly put in little pieces and little clues and whatnot as to what may have happened. But the general idea is what we have gotten the gist is that when Lucifer was sent out of heaven, he came down, took over hell, and took a bunch of Belial's powers and gave them to separated them and gave them to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So Belial now has decided, screw this, I want my world back. So he's trying to kill and defeat all of the 4 horsemen so he can get those powers back so he's strong enough to take on Lucifer again. So in issues 1 and 2, in issue 1, I love this because basically he kind of went and he even said it. He treated it like prison. He just decided, I'm going to treat it like prison. I'm going to walk up and smack out the biggest guy there. So he took on War. Took out War, got War's powers. In issue 2, we decided let's make it a twofer. He went after both Pestilence and Famine, got their powers as well. And now we're in issue 3, and this is the one he's literally been worrying about since issue 1. He even had a moment where he was watching death. So now it's death, and now he's got to find a way to deal with death. But also in this issue, he has an ally who has betrayed him, and so he has to deal with that as well. So there's a lot going on all over the place.
Yeah, let's really get into that because obviously the first 2 issues are a bunch of dick jokes, a bunch of fart jokes. It's beer drinking. It's kind of how I describe it, the biggest block party in hell type of comic book. And then issue 3 is the pivot where we still have those funny things in there. There's a few dick punches in there to, you know, somebody. And it's kind of funny, but it's also now escalated to, I guess, a more serious comic. And so what is this like? Because clearly now we're going to the end and we're getting to the showdown. And I don't know who's going to win. We don't know. It could go either way, I think. And so what is this like to really evolve the comic? Because there's nothing wrong with having a funny, block party in hell type of book, but also there gets to a point where you need to raise the stakes a little bit. So what has that been like? Because I think that's something that's fascinating about this issue, and people may or may not be ready for it.
Well, it's kind of the point where we were saying, we really needed to level up, and through our own developmental stages and things that we've been able to do over the past couple of years within the comic community, and giving ourselves the time to produce the comic book and kind of level up ourselves, I think we wanted to represent what that level up in each episode, like each issue that we do. And so while we got people to get familiarized with characters, with their with the character's character, what each person is about, we introduced all the characters in the story. Now it's a time to dig into the actual story. Now we felt that people were invested in each one of, like, Belial and Link and Mammon and Lucifer, and we've introduced all the main players now. So now that we've been able to get in there, now's the time to pry open the story a little bit and dig into what is going on a deeper level. So while on the surface we have had a lot of those dick and fart jokes and stuff, there has always been a rich story underneath. And if you were to look into it a little bit, then, and if you've been with us for the entire ride so far, you'll see some of those themes reoccurring and those aha moments that we kind of refer back to. Even the first, 5 pages of the first issue has a big turnaround in issue number 3. And so we also wanted to show people that, hey, yeah, we've got a lot of jokes, but we're also very serious about what we do. And now's the time to, if you're just jumping in, getting in on it, now's your time to recognize that, hey, these guys actually mean business, and so does Belial.
Yeah, and to even go further into that, because I think that's one of the things that, obviously in the franchise I always go to is sort of Law and Order. Where Law and Order, the first, season, especially SVU, you're getting to know these characters. And then obviously they built more stories and more complex elements to it. And obviously the first 12 seasons, really introduced Stabler's family life and a bunch of other complicated issues that were really laid down in that first, second, and third season that played a big part in season 8 and 9. So what is that like for you guys to do that? Because I think that's something that lacks in comics, is the foresight to start planning and hitting those, I guess, elements that you need to plant the seed so that you get that big payoff. If you plant the seed in issue 1, you get that big payoff in issue 3.
I mean, we were planting those seeds as early as the outline for the whole series. Like, we were already talking about stuff that we wanted to do towards the end. And that is the nice thing about only having 4 issues, is that it's a little easier to go, you don't have to wait as long for the payoff. And you certainly, you're able, your audience is going to, you're not as worried that your audience won't stick around for all of it. So, it was easy for us to... Pardon me?
Oh, we're going to talk about why it's only 4 issues.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that. I mean, so that was something that I came up with early on when Shaun brought the idea to me. I was like, I envision it as 4 issues. And I kind of brought up the way I saw it, and we, started going back and forth and did all that kind of stuff. But if you pay attention, we've opened up enough stuff that just because it will finish, this thing will finish in issue 4, we've left more than enough that we can come back and do other things in this universe.
Yeah, let's talk about that too, because I want to table the 4 issue thing for 1 second, but even just the world, because this is one of the things that I think is interesting, is that people, and I'm not a good world builder. It's not a good skill I have. But what is that like to really build and develop this world so that you can come back into this world, or you could potentially do a sequel, or you could tell another story that's going on at the same time, or from a different perspective, because sometimes people build worlds that close after the story ends. And I think it's a real shame, because if you spent hours and labor and love and you build a great world, but then issue 4, issue 5, or issue 12 ends, whatever your number is, and you can't go back and play into it, it's kind of a waste, I feel, of energy and space and creativity.
Well, I think to an extent, like part of our own thing has been that we've given ourselves a few creative outs to be able to expand, and not knowing how people would react to the story. Indie comics being what they are, if we were going to make it to issue 4, those are a lot of variables that happen along the way. And we've always been super open to feedback. And one of the things that really happened that was really huge for the story was Chuck's introduction of the Link character. That character hit it out of the park when it comes to people being on to latch on to one of the characters. And so allowing him to have a creative out for a possible spin-off or something like that, it's just a huge opportunity for us to give a big nod to not turning away from where success might be obtainable, even in a side light.
See, that's also interesting too, because what is that like? Because one of the things is that obviously when we look at mainstream comics, they don't really, I feel, have the option of feedback until they're 6 issues deep, because they have to produce something every month. Sometimes they also have to produce a book where it just so happens that there's 5 weeks in a month, and the issue comes out on week 1 and also comes out on issue 5, and so they don't really get.
That's a big part about being able to build your own world, is because you're not playing in an already established playground. So you don't have to pump out that stuff, and you're kind of experimenting and seeing what sticks. And it makes it fun for me. And I know that Chuck enjoys that as well. Wow. Just because, give the people what they want, and at the same time have fun with it. We've allowed each person that's been involved in Belial, whether it's making covers or even just lettering, to kind of, showcase their self and have fun. And the success of Belial, even so far, really is a testament to the people that follow, the people that have backed the book, the people that have gave us feedback, reviewers like yourself, interviewers, and artists, and everything. So,
because the thing is that, and where I was going with this is that obviously when you put out issue 1 and then you get feedback, that definitely influences, where issue 2 goes and then issue 3. And it's a real advantage, I feel, for creativity, is when you get instant feedback, and feedback can be bad too at the same time. I mean, it all depends on where it's coming from and also how it's presented. And there's going to be haters no matter which way you cut it. But even with those haters, sometimes they do make fair points. And so what has this been like? Because I think that's something that a lot of indie creators actually don't talk about. And I haven't really heard, because I listen to a lot of other people doing interviews, and I don't think anybody really talks about what the feedback they got from issue 1 on a creativity level. I know people talk about it on a Kickstarter level, but I don't hear about the creativity level. And so what is that like? Because that's a real advantage, I feel.
I would say 2 of the big things that I heard from issue 1, and Shaun, feel free to chime in if you heard any others. But 2 of the big ones were, A, it's a funny book. Lean into the humor even harder. And we're like, okay, and if you go from issue 1 to 2 to 3, you'll see that humor just keeps hitting harder and harder. Obviously 3, we made some space for some other things, but the humor is still very there and very hard. And the other one was they wanted more action. And so in issue 2, there's definitely more action in issue 1. And I would say in issue 3, there's definitely more action than in issue 2 and 1. And issue 4 is going to be ridiculous where that's concerned. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything different than that to say, actually. It's pretty much right on the head.
And then to go further into the action stuff, because it gets super interesting. And obviously, the main character gets a betrayal to some degree. And that's a fascinating situation. And I think that the 2 of you hit that really on the head in a very unique way. Going to spoil a little bit of it. There's some memories. There's some history that's revealed. There's also some other things that are revealed. And so what is that like? Because it's not just a shallow betrayal. It's a pretty deep betrayal there's some serious history. There's some serious stuff going on, and I'm going to use a code word here, and this maybe somebody will understand it. No, I'm Triple H Daniel Bryan. I was going to use that as a code word, and if anybody knows what I'm referring to, that's all right. That's all right. I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible because I want people to actually buy the book.
Well, and to be fair, we do see that betrayal at the end of issue 1. So if you have read the other books, you do know about the betrayal. Yeah, you know what? So the funny thing about the betrayal is that was never in the outline. That was something actually as I was writing issue 1. I remember I was working at the bar at the time, and I contacted Shaun. I said, "Hey, Shaun, I'm about to do something either really cool or really stupid." And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "I'm just going to write it. And if you like it, cool. If you don't, then we'll figure it out and we'll take it out or play with it or whatever." And so I wrote in that betrayal, and he messaged me and he was like, "Oh, dude, I did not see that coming." And I'm like, "Great. If you don't see it coming, neither do they." And he was like, "Yeah, no, I like it." I'm like, "Great, cool." So that gave us something to play upon even more. And that's just something like, as you're feeling something out, as you're doing something, you're like, what am I missing? And I felt like there was some other layers, some emotional layers that were kind of missing from it. The humor was there.
Tension.
Yeah.
We needed tension.
Absolutely.
And the interactions that were established in issue 1 that carry over all the way to issue 3, that tension that lies between those characters has been it just shows the depth of difference of personalities with each of the main players of the story. And I think it helps everybody kind of identify with something that maybe they've gone through or have identified for themselves, and like pitches in its thematic qualities to something we've all kind of experienced through life.
Yeah, I mean, I took it a little bit different where I viewed it that these characters have been around each other for a long time. And I don't know if you can die in hell. I don't know how that all works. But if you've been around somebody for 50 years, your personality is going to change with them. Your maturity is going to change with them. Without going into the whole story, me and a friend have obviously grown apart and we had a very explosive ending to our relationship. And it's because we have gone into 2 different maturity paths. And I think that's something that this really captures in a very interesting way, where obviously these 2 friends have obviously matured at a very different rate. And I mean, I think they've done it over 6-7 months, but this was a long time coming, is really how this has come to a head at this point. But it's been brewing for a while. And so it's very interesting because while they are demons, they are very humanistic at the same time. And I think you really just said it perfectly, where this is a human trait, because I think everybody's been to and experienced a betrayal, maybe not a violent one, but, and maybe not one that ended in a dick punch. But I think it's very interesting how you 2 hit it, because it's fascinating. And I don't know why Chuck is laughing, but
he likes dick punches, bro. That's all there is to it.
I mean, I think there's at least 3 in that particular issue. I believe there's 3 dick punches in there. Sure. So yeah, I'm a fan.
I also like the fact that after the betrayal, and this is not ruining anything, obviously, they side with Belial, and they say, "How come you never did ladies' night?" I think that's hilarious. I think that's such a little twist of the knife, and it's and so what is that like too? Because that also does break up the tension, where when you have an intense scene and then somebody cracks a joke, it eases up things and it kind of cools down the situation before we jump right back into, no pun intended, hell. I mean, no pun intended there, but it's like it's really well done writing, and I don't know if people recognize that.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Shaun brought up something that I thought was really cool, and I hadn't outwardly considered it, but what he said was, if we had stuck with the original intent, which was to make a really dark book and not have the humor in there, the things that are in there right now would have seemed super grotesque. There's some really messed up kills and stuff in there that happen that would have been way more grotesque because the humor wasn't there. But the humor allowed us to get away with some stuff that was, probably pretty brutal and messed up. And because you're laughing along the way, you're not, like your psyche as the reader, it's not taking the full brunt of these fucked up things that are happening.
It's very much a shout out to the fact that we did get some feedback stating that, well, it's where like this came from. We had feedback that said that Belial felt very animated to them and they wanted to see it on like a Cartoon Network, Adult Swim type of situation. And so I think when we lean into that cartoony animated aspect, we get away with that Acme violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, you know what I mean? Like when the coyote got an anvil dropped on his head, that's pretty serious stuff, but you can get away with it and you can laugh about it if you look at it in the right way. But if you were to twist that up and bring that to like a real crime noir or a horror book, it would be a whole nother feel, but it lends itself to the dark roots of the book and stays true to the comedic maturing of the story.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because the way I read it is that I viewed it where there's some funny situations that occur. A guy is rallied up in a bar and wants to take back hell that he sort of lost. And then he's leading an army half drunk, taking something over. And, it allows me just to naturally laugh. And then if you insert the comedy in there, I don't feel like I'm fucked up and I'm viewing this in a darker way. If that makes any sense. I don't know how to explain it. Like it gives me an ability as a reader to say, I'm not screwed up enough that I can laugh at this. And it sounds weird when you say it that way, but there are questions when you read some messed up shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Say, I'm enjoying this, but it's messed up. And when you insert those little comedy things like Ladies' Night in there, I'm like, oh, okay. You know what it is? It brings me, I guess, back down a little bit. Well, I'm not completely fucked up reading this shit. Only semi.
It's
By
like,
the way,
it's
Andrew.
It's like when you have your kid on those
you go.
little leashes at the amusement park. You allow them to get as far as you can, but then you get to snap them back to where you want them to be, where it's safe. But they still get to experience that freedom while they're out and roaming forward.
I love that you didn't try to actually talk about a dog on a leash. You're like, when you got your kid on a leash.
I'm a dad. Come on. Go with what I know.
No, but something I wanted to touch on real quick is that different people who read it, they obviously connect to different things. And that particular joke, Andrew, is one no one has mentioned yet. So I'm so glad that one connected with you. Because, again, that was another one I was very proud of. And, so thank you for that. That means a lot to me.
I have a story about it, but I don't feel like sharing the story about Ladies' Night. It was a good night for me. It was a good night for me is all I'm going to say.
What's good. Really cool is that making this digital circuit of podcasts and stuff is it seems like almost everybody has had just certain things that's different almost on every single one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really fun to kind of watch how people, okay, so you get a lot of action books out there. You get a lot of like horror and stuff, and people get the same feedback and it's a static thing, and the creators are okay with that, and it's not bad because that's the sole purpose. But when we've left so many outs for people to have their own experiences, and that's through Chuck's writing really masterfully, I think, in the pages, it allows that identifiability that if people give it a chance, because let's face it, it's not a standard looking book, but if people give it a chance, they're going to realize that we have a lot more meat on the bone, so to speak.
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously I don't do many podcast stuff and I haven't written a comic yet, but I think that's one of the things about comics. And also your book is different. So naturally, everybody, I think, is going to have a different reaction to it. And I think that's something that is, just out there. But I also think that comics give the reader something to look at. And this is a diverse book. It's also the idea that it's not superheroes, right? When everybody does a superhero comic, in my opinion, at the very least, it's all starts looking the same. Not to mention, and nothing against any superhero comic book, but you have things like My Hero Academia out there. You have the Justice League. Like, I don't mean to sound like I'm anti-indie comics, but I don't think in a superhero book right now you can beat the Justice League, Young Justice, or My Hero Academia. I just don't think you can beat it right now. I don't. And that doesn't mean if somebody did something that's written badly or drawn badly. It's just that's at the best level it's ever been at. So with this, I don't think that there's something similar out there if you look hard enough, but there's not enough similarity, or there's not something that's My Hero Academia level similarity out there. And so I think people are like, this is different, and I want to take a look at it.
Thank you, man. That's really cool to hear.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny when you're talking about different people connecting to different things. I think that was very much something that we wanted. We wanted to be able to have something that felt different in your hands, and it was why we leaned into the comedy for what would have been otherwise a horror hell book, and why we made a lot of the different changes we made. And it reminds me of I think a fun example is if you look at page 1 of issue 1, it's a man dying and this pregnant woman watching him die, and her husband's like, come on, you're gonna hurt the baby, like, you need to go. And she's like, no, I need to see this guy die. And of course he dies, and then that's our vision, our visual pull into hell. But what's been really fun about that particular page is that I was very specific to not mention the relationship between the woman and the man. Like, obviously, the woman and the other man is her husband, but the woman and the dying man, never once did I mention any kind of relationship. And I've had several people be like, they do things like, oh man, like, she's really angry at her uncle. And I was like, oh, is she? How do you feel about your uncle? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I didn't mention that it was her fucking uncle, dude. So I think you're playing into something. And it's cool to see them imprint themselves on those situations. And they're hopefully doing it with the book. And that's something that we both very much wanted, is for them to imprint themselves on the book and see and feel different things, because we're playing with so much stuff.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting. And obviously people imprint things, I think, into characters. And also, I think it's easier with certain books than others. And obviously with an indie title right now, it might be easier because there's just less history of these characters. They're brand new. And so it's a blank slate in a lot of ways.
You also have to be willing to not explain everything. And I think that's a lot of writers, they get these ideas and they want to explain everything. And I'm kind of the opposite, wherein I'm like even when I'm writing my script, Shaun can tell you my scripts are not uber detailed. And that's because I trust and know that Shaun and Greg love to bring the horror and love to bring their own vibe. Why the hell would I try to imprint my vibe on there when, to be honest, like, hell is not necessarily something that I identify and connect with as much. So why would I try to over-explain what everything should look like when those guys are going to blow it out of the water if I just let them play? So and to me, it's the whole idea of Jaws. You don't see the shark until the very end, and even then you never really see the whole thing. And that's the scary part. That's the part that we both connect to.
I'll throw you another movie that's brilliant. Star Trek Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan is one of the most brilliant movies ever made. And the reason why is that Kirk and Khan never interact directly with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're communicating, across things. They don't speak to each other. They don't physically strike each other. There's actually not that much violence in that movie. I mean, if you look at it, it's actually a very not explosive movie till the very end. Now, sorry to ruin it. It's been around for 40 years, guys. So if you didn't see it, I'm just saying, if 40 years, I think is the cutoff. If it was 39, I'd be hesitant.
Well, and there's been a reboot that very much touched on the same damn movie. So, come on, people.
And for me, the whole Belial and the process with the writing and everything, I view it very much like a boxing match. You're in there and you got to have style, you got to have flair if you want to create a good show. So you have to know when to swing hard and when to pull a punch. Because when you pull some of those punches, it creates an opening to really just dig in and get in there. And so leaving those creative openings for us has allowed us to really dig in to some really impactful moments and allows those people to take the punch how they feel they need to. Their own defensive mechanisms kind of trigger those moments.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And then obviously, you know, he's dealing with the fourth horseman or horsewoman. I think that doesn't ruin too much. I think, you know, we're equal offenders.
On the cover.
We are equal offenders here, guys. I am an equal offender completely. But it's very interesting what's going on with death. And so what was that like? Because that is very philosophical in a lot of ways. And it's a very, very loaded, I guess, situation. I don't want to say question because it's not a question. I feel it's more of a situation, philosophy, thought process. And it's very interesting. And then there's obviously the character that death is bringing to die, or I guess along the river Styx, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so that's also fascinating too, what happens to her. And so it's very interesting. You could take a reincarnation element to it. There's a bunch of stuff that could be in play. So what was this like? Because death wants something that death doesn't have. And I don't know. I don't want to ruin, like,
right?
You could ruin it. I don't want to be the guy that ruins it.
I like to think of it this way. If you're looking at each one of the issues, each issue, if you're looking for it, you'll notice which power it is that he acquires through each issue. But you have to be willing to look at it because it's not a superhero book, but we did explain the entire way that he did give away powers. But we try to showcase those powers in a way that allows it to be like an aha type of moment and be like, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, and how is that going to be pertinent to the end game?
Yeah, no, again, I just don't want to ruin it because it is very much a shock what happens at the end of it. And I don't want to be the guy that ruins it. You know, I just don't want to be that guy.
I feel you. I don't either. So, yeah, I mean, all I'll really say is that the main beat is something that we had planned from the outline. Like, that was something that we had gone over and we had very much thought that was a really cool way to take it. I will say that I really believe that moment was made all the stronger by the fact that I absolutely adored The Good Place. And so for me, that was something that as I was working in that, I got to play with some philosophical stuff that I don't get to play with as much. And I feel like it allowed me to heighten the scene and whatnot. But the bare bones and what was happening there, that's day one stuff. Like, that's the stuff we literally had it all written out on day one. And if I were able to somehow find those notes, you would find that beat in there.
And even as creators, I know that the dealing with the death as a horseman, we as creators also dealt with death in our own lives during the production of the book. And so that theme seemed to resonate a little bit stronger even for us during the creation of the book, because if you notice, there's a couple of old gentlemen that are in that book. One's Steve and one is Gord. And both of those gentlemen were impactful people in our lives that passed during the creation of this past issue. So it's I think part of that, the way it played out kind of was a way to work through our own losses and our own sense of impact and, hopes and for ourselves and our own loved ones that passed on during the process. So it was a good opportunity for that as well, to really reach in because we were both reaching into a very real and raw spot at the time.
Luckily, both those guys have, I think, a dirty sense of humor, and they were both rough around the edges. So
they're
putting them
fantastically
there,
obscene.
yeah. So putting them in there was not a stretch. Like I remember contacting, because Gord was my stepdad, so contacting my mom and step siblings and whatnot, and being like, so this is something that Gord says, and they're like, yeah, I can see him saying that. And I'm like, great, cool. I don't feel like I stepped over a line. If they had not been cool with it, it might have still ended up in there. I just wouldn't try to sell it to them. But but you know, we tried to make sure that we weren't painting them in a bad light, and yet we were still treating them like characters in Belial. You know, we weren't sugarcoating them. We were making them still kind of, you know, a little vile, a little crude, more than a little crude, very crude. And yeah, I think I'm really proud of it, and I think that they would really have laughed their butts off on it.
No, that's super fascinating, and I love when people pay homages to people in books and things like that. And obviously, when you put somebody in a book, more or less, hopefully they live forever. Is the idea, or as long as the book's being printed, you know. But even going further into the Four Horsemen, because obviously you're dealing with the Four Horsemen, and that's one of the things that's interesting about this book too, is that people understand hell and they're familiar with hell. Everybody has a different version of hell that they view, but also everybody knows what the Four Horsemen look like. And so that's another thing that's also, I think, very helpful to your book, is that I know, and I'm not a very religious person, you know, I don't read the Bible, I don't read the Tanakh, I haven't read the Quran, but in some form or fashion, the Four Horsemen have been in those books. And so what is that like? Because I think that's also helpful, because this book takes a different approach to hell and takes somewhat of a different approach to the Four Horsemen, but it also has similarities. And I think that makes people feel comfortable in a lot of ways too. And so what is that like? Because I think that helps your book tremendously.
I think with the creation of each one, even with the character design for each of the horsemen, we wanted to go a little bit non-traditional with the way that they look, but still keep some of those traditional values. So like War was very cocky, very, you know, with the, what would you say? That Western, you know, who was the Duke, you know? So he's very cocky, very out there, which resonated with a War type character. He just felt he was big and bad. Then when we went over to Famine and Pestilence, a lot of people have Famine being the bigger, the larger person, you know, the always consuming. And I wanted to play with it in a way that maybe they were never full. They never gained sustenance from anything. And with Pestilence being just vile and gross, and he's the one that looks like a big pus bubble, more or less. And then, you know, giving people, if you were to look at death and the fact that a lot of the characteristics that go along with death are generally like assuming male characteristics. And so we wanted to give them something a little bit different. It's very important for us to actually have a strong female character, in which what way better to drive the assumed expectation out the window than to give people, you know, that female perspective, that female character. And why wouldn't they be one of the most plotting type and most knowledgeable type of people? There's a lot to be said there. I mean, you know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and obviously I love interpretations of the Four Horsemen or women or demons, whatever they are considered to be. You know, East and West was great, and I dealt with them by image. And you know, obviously, I just think it's super interesting, and I think it's just something that is always nice when it's done well. So on that point, though, I'm going to stop talking about this story because I'm going to ruin everything for everybody. But basically, we're getting to the point where Belial is going to face Lucifer down, and it's coming, and that's not a spoiler. And they basically have said that one of them is going to die. Pretty much is how this thing is going to end. who dies? I mean, I think it's a coin toss. I really do. I don't think one side is overpowered than the other at this point. I think it's a coin toss on what's going to happen.
I will tell you that if we've surprised you so far, we are not done doing it. So if you're walking in, you're going, it's Belial's book. He's gonna win, and he's gonna kill Lucifer, and this is how it's gonna go. If that's what you're expecting, you might not see what you think you're gonna see.
With every character that we've had in the book, with every theme that we've had so far in the book, we've taken what was obvious and tried to give it a huge spin. Our little guy has the biggest attitude. Our big guy is actually not a dumb oaf. He is very methodical in the way that he's thinking of things. Like I said, with Famine and Pestilence and stuff, they're almost the opposite of what people expected them to be. And then once people expected just a dick and fart book, we gave them some theology and some like really deep moments. So we really are digging in even more for the fourth and the resolve for the story.
Yeah, and then even going further into that, and obviously this is one of the things that I actually like about your book, and I like it about a lot of series, is I like 4-issue series because there's a few reasons why. There's a beginning. I know there's a middle. I know it's going to end. Nothing against anybody, but when you're doing a 50-issue series, it's a freaking beast to read that thing. It's a pain in the ass. You got to be up to date, and it gets tiring after a while. Not to mention it gets expensive. And I think that's something that people don't realize. And also, even if you're pumping out an issue every 3 months, it's still a fuck ton of time for you to invest. And so what is this like? Because I know you guys are indie and you're not pumping them out every single month, but even still, it is a short amount of time I have to wait for issues 1, 2, 3, and 4, especially from the person who's been with you from issue 1. They're not waiting for a whole series to be completed over 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that we did in order to create the value for the story being told and to be able to hit the multiple themes that we do have and the multiple stories that we have kind of going on within the bigger story is we've allowed it to be 32 pages instead of the standard 22 pages. So we wanted to make sure that we created that value, and it's just like when you have a sale or something else like that, people usually digest nice round numbers a lot easier. So saying it's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, people already expect 4 because of the 4 horsemen. Why not drive home that theme? Give them 4 strong issues. And it's almost like so far, if you're buying 4, you get 1 free with the number of pages that are in these things. So really, we're trying to create the value and the perception of value and the enrichment of the actual story and what we're actually able to do. So we want to create full arcs within each issue, some sort of strong resolve, but enough intrigue to go on to the next issue. So hopefully with the way that they're structured so far, people will realize that, hey, when we tell you that there's something big coming for issue 4, they'll be able to identify those huge beats that we've had through the previous issues and say, okay, now we're digging in. Now we're going to notice, this, if they're saying it's a big deal, they've been honest with us so far, they're going to drive this thing home.
I know it makes sense. And again, my whole thing is that I don't want to be with a series for 10 years because nothing against Kickstarter, nothing against any crowdfunding. I don't know how the market is going to evolve in the next 3 years because in 2020, the market took a massive shift. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be another shift at some point. And it's just that it's great if somebody's with you for 10 years. But that's a lot to ask because a lot of things change in people's lives. And look, it's nice when a series ends and you've read it and you've enjoyed it. And it's nice to know that it's not going to go on forever. And that's just me as a consumer because even 12 issues is a lot, I feel, for an indie book.
All right, if I'm being totally honest with you, if somebody threw enough money at me, I would sell out in a heartbeat. But as an indie creator, and always seeing the progress and how other people are developing and the stories that are out there, there is no shortage to ideas for stories. And if I was to strap myself down to one for 50 years, that would have to have some sort of, rocket behind it. And money's a big rocket. But until then, I want to explore all the avenues of creativity and see where I can go with them,
I'm curious how you guys feel about this, because I said this before. I said the biggest problem in comics is not creativity. That has never been the biggest problem. It's cash flow. It's not even money. It's cash flow. Because if you have $1,500 coming in every month from your IP or your idea, you can produce enough books. Maybe you can't produce 12 books a year, but you can produce at least 6. At least 6, maybe 8, if you really figured out how to, work it. And you are cash flowing every single month, $1,500. And so that's the biggest problem in comics. It's not creativity. Now, there are good ideas and bad ideas in comics, but that's what the free market's for. But again, it goes back to cash flow. It doesn't go back to anything else. It doesn't go back to art. It doesn't go back to other problems that exist. There are other problems, obviously. Supply shortages is a big issue, but the real issue is cash flow. It's a C word, and it's not creativity.
Well, I think that, and the funny thing is that, so when you talk about supply shortages and creativity and all that kind of stuff, all of those things are ebb and flow sorts of things. Some creators are going to be really nailing it, and then for a while they're going to hit a dry spot. Sometimes, we're going to have shortages, and then all of a sudden there's tons of paper, and printing is going to be even cheaper, and all that kind of stuff. Like that stuff sort of ebbs and flows. But the market where being able to pay for and make comics has always been a tough one, especially for indies. Even in the 90s, when there was a bunch of money, that bunch of money was not spread out over everybody. It was a little more centralized in certain spots. Like, I mean, people will look and they'll go, "There's a massive boom. Image was making all that money." Yeah, they were, and at the same time, Marvel was going bankrupt. So no, like the money was not spread out. There was still basically the same amount of money. It was just all getting funneled into one spot.
Yeah. I know all about this, and this is like my freaking background, everybody. This is my background. So, and we don't have to go into my background. October 5th, my class is coming, supposedly. Hey, it's time.
I like that.
It's time I got rich. Got a whole lot richer, actually.
Then you can buy more books, so I'm good for that.
I could buy more retail packages, and I could actually, build what I want to build, which is an island for every comic creator to have a vacation, because they all need one. But a private island somewhere in a country that doesn't have extradition, so everything's good there. But
shit's gonna get real. I like it.
Hey! I don't mean anything illegal. I just want, some Mary Jane, and I don't want the government to bother me about it. That's all I really want, guys.
I'm Canadian. I feel you 100% there. Yeah.
But anyhow, enough about me potentially getting myself in more trouble here and getting shut down. But yeah, no, the whole problem is cash flow, and it is nothing else. That's the whole problem with comics. It is the number one problem. But I do want to back out of all this. Your book's 32 pages, and I want to talk about rewards, because this is the fun part, and this is the part where I get to show pictures, because I like pictures, and pictures are fun. So obviously you could just get the digital issue for issue 3. If you live in a foreign country, this is probably your best bet. Or you get the entire digital set. And again, if you live in a foreign country or you are not necessarily a physical reader, that's great. But if you do want a physical copy, I think that you can still get a physical copy. And I believe this is cover A.
Yeah. That is so all of our standard covers, always, they're done by Greg Warrencheck. And pretty much every time Greg goes, "Hey, I have an idea." Like, we don't even talk to him about a cover right away. He's like, I read the book. I've drawn everything. I have an idea," and he'll come to us. And he came to us with this. Now, a lot of people will notice that it looks very much like another cover, because it is in fact his homage to Neil Adams's Superman versus Muhammad Ali. The crazy thing is, what a lot of people don't know is, we made that cover before Neil passed away. We didn't know that there was anything wrong with Neil, that he was sick or anything when we made this. So it's a really nice, touching homage to him without us even being aware that it was going in that direction. So, and honestly, for my money, and I'll state it outright, I feel like every one of the standard covers has gotten better every time, and this is absolutely the best standard cover we have available at this time.
And then obviously covers sell. I don't think that's a secret. And then you brought Steph back.
Oh yeah.
And there is a uncensored version of this, but I would like to keep my YouTube account and my Facebook account and my Twitch account and anywhere else where I am streaming as kosher as humanly possible. So if you would like, extra big boobs that don't have clothes on them, you can get that covered too. But for the sake of me not getting in more trouble than I need to be in, I'm going to keep the censor cover up here, which is pretty not censored.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Chuck makes an appearance on that uncensored cover too.
That's true.
Big old prude that he is.
If you look at the comic that Link is holding, you can see a little picture down there. Now, I believe on the censored one, we've got our man Shaun.
No,
and this
one's me.
Yeah.
And on the naughty one is
the naughty one is me. And it's because one night, I don't even know what we were talking about. We were screwing around. I think Steph was saying something about sending nudes. So I'm laying in bed and I took a picture. It's just me from like my chest up. And I'm like this. And I took a picture. And I'm not wearing a shirt or anything. Dude fucking kept it. And he like randomly sends it to me as a joke every once in a while. And so he inserted it into that magazine. So I've checked it on my computer and I'm like, are people going to be able to tell? Crap, I think they might be able to tell if they look really close.
So that's that one. And then there is this one as well.
Ooh, yeah. That's Connie Jolitz. And she's done this amazing, we call it our glam punk cover. And it's for her, it's very much an homage to, or at least a shout out to NoFX, because we see Belial's shirt that says Bottles to the Ground, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of their songs and one of their album names.
Yeah.
And I when I saw this, I loved it. Not only for, the basics of having so many characters on one cover, but also the watercolor effect. And that's just bringing out, kind of one of the aesthetic things that we've had running through all the issues so far.
Well, and I don't think we've actually openly talked about this even between each other, Shaun, but like, she is the first one to really, like, all of our covers are kind of dark. And she came in and she still made it feel like hell, and the debauchery is still there and all of that. But she gave it this really nice feminine touch without it feeling like flowers and daffodils and prancing and stuff. Like, it still feels like a raunchy book, and yet it just has this color on it that we probably never would have considered until she said, hey, I did this thing. And we're like, hey, that's a cover. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I think there's at least one or two more. I might be missing one of them because I know one of them just recently came out. But there's this, that, and this. And so I don't know if this one is a cover. I think it is, right?
It is, and it's colored now. It's done. And in fact, that's an homage. I love Shaun. And Shaun did me, I think, a solid. And he said, hey, man, you're such a huge Megadeth fan. Why are we not doing a Megadeth homage cover. And I had not thought about it because I don't tend to be as, especially with Belial, which is a book that is ours. You know what I mean? I don't tend to be quite as selfish about it. So, with one of my other books, I can do that, but I never really considered it. And he's like, dude, be selfish. Like, what do you want? And I was like, I would love to do a Rust in Peace homage. Like, that would just be awesome because it's such a good cover. Not even my favorite album necessarily, but such a good cover. No, it is a great album. And so we talked to our boy Chris Mad, and he did this amazing piece, which and actually it is, if you check out the Kickstarter, it's fully colored. And what's absolutely amazing about it is we now have an add-on where you can get it as a metal cover.
So let's talk about that too, because metals are huge. Obviously, I'm no stranger to metals. Zenoscope does a bunch of metals. Brian Pulido does some metals. And I think everybody has basically copied Zenoscope and Brian Pulido with the metal game. And so what is that like? Because that's kind of the new big thing with comics right now. And people go absolutely ballistic over metals. And so what is that like for you to get in that game and also get into a higher tier comic, for lack of a better word?
Well, that's the thing. Shaun's been saying it all along. Like, we're stepping up our game. And we had some cool, fun things early on. We had, and of course we still have the stickers and stuff, but we had the stickers. We had prints. We're not doing prints anymore. We had the air freshener. And this time we were very much about, we want to just bring out an amazing book. We want to focus on the book as much as possible. And we wanted to level up. And that was something we were both excited to do. And we've had people say, why don't you do issue 1 as a metal? And we were like, because issue 1 would look cool as a metal, but this would look fucking awesome. Like, this felt like it was made. It's a metal homage that's done on metal. The colors are gorgeous and vibrant. And yeah, so it lended itself so perfectly to that choice.
It's a metal homage cover. It's a metal cover. It's Rust in Peace homage, and it's made out of metal. It was a given. Yeah.
All the layers are there, folks.
Because it's interesting, and I think that's the other thing that I've been also talking about, that Kickstarter is not retail. And I think people need to really understand that Kickstarter is an experience, and it's not retail. So when I back a Kickstarter, I don't mind spending an extra $10 because I'm helping a book get made. I'm also part of an experience. There's stretch goals. You're also there for the ride to some degree. You're there for some other bonus stuff. And I think that's what metal covers do. And when I know a cover is only going to be on Kickstarter and maybe 5 of them are going to be at a table, that's also part of the experience versus a book being in retail. And I think that's something that people need to understand. And they also need to be reminded that this is an experience. It is not, the, retail package, and you're not going to get the same deal that you're going to get in a store. But you're also,
if you look at it in a way that when you look at those retail books, there's thousands of them being printed, thousands of them being sold. And if you got word that there was only going to be 300 of this issue of Batman being printed, those would definitely go for a higher price point. And so when you're backing up any of these indie creators, and I say creators in general, indie artists, as far as musicians, anybody on Etsy, anybody writing their own novels or comic books, you're getting a lower production level, which means that the cost of production is higher because you always get those price breaks for the massive quantities of prints. Yeah. Plus, if it's a successful title and it gets ran out to a good publisher and they score a good publisher, you have a pre-production copy of the book. All things that add value to chipping in on somebody's Kickstarter if it's a book or creator that you really believe in.
And Shaun and I have been very adamant about, we understand that this is a collector's, that these are considered collector's items in a lot of ways, especially with the idea that we would, when it's all done, we would love to, and we've already started speaking to publishers So this will be very much a collector's item, and we've treated it that way. So all of these amazing variant covers that you guys are loving, we don't reprint them. So there's about 100 or less of each of these covers, and I can tell you personally, my store, issue 1, we had one variant cover. We had the Hold My Beer cover, sold out. I have none, and I know that Shaun's running pretty low on his run too. In issue 2, when we had the Steph Wilson cover, I sold out of that too. I have none. And Shaun, I think you said you have 3.
I have 3 left.
Yeah. I think I actually accidentally even sold my copy of the Steph Wilson cover. I might have. So, and whatever, it is what it is. But yeah, so those will never get reprinted. So if they're out there and you've got them, it's actually kind of a big deal, especially, with the hopes that we do something with it moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that it's tricky. I have a whole thing about indie books, and we're not going to go into that. And it's not in my class. But it's extremely speculative, but there's money to be made. It is really what it is, where, that's what it goes down to. Not to mention that, that Steph Wilson, cover where it's Hooters or Looters. I don't know. Steph doesn't know. I asked. It could be either or. It could be either or. I'm just saying, and I call it down the middle here because both work. It
could also be Cooters, but whatever.
Chuck, we're a fucking family-friendly show here.
I've been on the show before. You know that, right? Fuck.
But no. I think it's really interesting, and I think that's something that, when I back a Kickstarter, and this is just me personally, I'm not looking to resell the book. I'm looking to really put it on Instagram and have it in my collection. And I think a lot of people are like that too. But I do know what that Steph Wilson cover goes for on eBay. I checked about 2 months ago. It's about a $25 to $30 book. So, and it does sell around that price point. Maybe on a rough day, it sells for about $25. So it does have a value because people see it and they have a connection to it. And so it's something to pay attention to. And then there's this cover right here as well, which is also just a fun cover. And I guess they're all playing games here.
As a big shout out, if you notice those skeletons right there, that's Bill and Ted. And just like an homage to Bill and Ted's bogus journey, we've got, Link is holding Death in the boat there at the bottom because they're playing battle sticks. But it's like in the movie where Bill and Ted were playing games against Death to see if they could get out of hell. And in the movie, of course, they get out. But we wanted to kind of feature them in this. And this was a super duper fun one to make. And this is the most vibrant of the covers. And this one is super dope. If I had all the money in the world, I would turn this into a glow in the dark comic book cover.
Oh, that would be fun.
With that background with those greens and stuff.
Yeah.
Those would be super dope.
Yeah, to even talk about that, because that's something that's super interesting too, is that obviously when you produce a cover like this, and then you obviously get into saying you can do really cool stuff. You could foil it, and even where you can go with it next. And so, I mean, it's just one of those cool things. And obviously all these are super limited in that regard. So obviously there's stuff like that. And you guys offer a bunch of different packages with all this stuff where you can pick them up individually. You could pick up different copies of them, obviously. And I'm hoping that there's some add-ons so that if you got cover A and you want that cover, you can pick that up. And then you can get everything, and you get also the nude stuff. I think, is there only one nude or is there 2 in this one?
Just the one.
And then there's some other stuff. Obviously, you get physical copies of 1, 2, and 3 if you missed out, and it's a catch up. I know you get everything from Bonfire. I know there's stickers, and then there's also a retail package, which is always fun. And so I don't know if somebody has joined me in that conquest, but I'm gonna make a fortune off of it. Yeah.
We I don't think we've had a lot of people jump on, but we have had some we've had a little bit of nibbles on the retail.
And I will say that Belial number 1 and 2 at the local comic shop that I have has been, for each of the years that it's been on the shelves, their number 1 selling indie book. And that is a very real moment that I had to actually be like, whoa, wait a second. Is that for real? And they said, absolutely. So when they're calling me up to say, hey, can we feature you for a store signing? You're our number 1, selling book at our store. That's a big deal to me. That's huge, super huge.
Yeah, and so to even go further into this, because retail, from my understanding, is a bitch. I made a whole YouTube video about this, explaining it from my end. And the basic premise is that I need a 50% markdown or more because I accrue eBay fees, square footage fees, and I'm an eBay store. So I'm not even I've essentially, my basement is my warehouse, but I got to store the book. I got to get the book. eBay takes a percentage. I have to look at opportunity cost, and there's 50 other things that go on, not to mention that it is a risk. And so I need an upside. So if I buy a book for $10 and you say it's an MSRP of $20, I'm not making $20 after all my expenses. I'm making more like $5 to $6. And I think this is one of the things that people don't understand on Kickstarter. And I think it's a massive problem. Where people have a retail package of $250 for $30. And I'm like, I can't afford that. You need to get way lower. You need to be at $150 for me to even consider, because there's no money at $250.
Yeah.
And so
and it's not even always just about there's no money, because sometimes they're able to give it, let's say they're able to still give you the 50%, but they're asking you to invest $200 or $300. And it's like, man, I don't know how well your book's going to sell because it's not a known property, and you want me to shell out $20 or $30. And so that's why we tried to keep it lower. I think ours is around $60 or so, $50-$60. And we gave you a good chunk, 1, 2, and 3, like as much of them as possible. And we're really making almost nothing, if at all, off of the retail aspect of it. But it's because Shaun and I understand that, the retail is an important part. And that's another thing that we did do, is we included the MSRP. So we said, hey, it's worth this much. We're giving it to you for that much, which means that, on your end, as far as just you buying it from us, you have this much that you could profit from it.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that people need to understand, is that you have to make it a reasonable retail price, and it's also the exposure, because guess what? If somebody comes into a store, and an eBay store is a little bit different, but even if they come to your store and they see it, sometimes I know people will make 50 cents off their book in retail, but they want the exposure because some people won't go on Kickstarter. And let's be realistic. I mean, I don't know how you two feel, but I've been burned this year alone on about 4 Kickstarters. So I am very hesitant to back. And I mean, it's a pretty big burn. It's a $300,000 burn I was participating in. It's not that hard to know which one this is. It's pretty out there. And so I'm very hesitant to jump back into Kickstarter so quickly because of that. And when you have 3, 4, and even 5 projects that probably aren't going to be fulfilled, or they're not going to be fulfilled for years, you can't blame me for not wanting to come back to playing the pond so quickly.
Yeah, I know for me that when it comes to the retail tier, it is more, there's no profit really. There's pennies, if any. But it is something that if somebody can reach out and it's a valid sales point, whether it's an e-commerce type of situation or in the store on the shelves, if people are maintaining a reputable business and presenting them in a good and positive way that's reliable, then they're going to view your product as being more valid. Like these guys are, like yourself, you're throwing in for Belial, and it loans itself when you've got 100 books on your shelf, so to speak. There's a validity in there that says, hey, this is something that exists that I believe in, that I think you would be interested in, and I've invested myself in this. I think you should too.
Also, I mean, my whole theory is that I sell a lot of collectible books and I sell a lot of Zenescope books. And that's the other thing, too, that I think people don't realize is that all of a sudden somebody might come for a Paul Green book. And then they'll come and say, oh, what's this book? And they'll be like, oh, this cover looks really cool. Let me go check it out. And then all of a sudden they say, cool. And then I'm going to obviously write a description. Hey, I might have you guys write a description for me to put in the description box that might sell a little bit better, because now somebody might, that book sounds really cool. Let me try it. It's only $10. It's already in my order. The guy's giving me, not going to charge me another, $6 for shipping. Why not? And so now all of a sudden you have somebody who may or may not even know this thing exists, came for something because it looks cool. And that's the other thing that I think people don't understand about retail, is that you might get a new customer because there was another thing that they put it next to. And I think that's the other thing too, is that exposure is a big thing, and also cheap exposure is a big thing.
Yeah. And hopefully with having like the standard issues and stuff that you're able to offer that way, also through our campaign, in maybe those people will love it so much that you're able to go back and say, you know what, when these guys hit Kickstarter, they got some pretty dope exclusives that are available, and maybe it'll feed back in. And that's just the actual existence of supporting and networking and building success for each other. We believe in you, Andrew, just like you believe in us and Belial. So it is a mutual respect. There's a mutual trust. We trust that you're not going to misrepresent Belial or try to sell it as something it's not, or anything else like that. So it is very much a two-way street. And I know that we appreciate you very much, even for being there with us, because it speaks a lot to have anybody as a retailer, kind of jump in on with us.
Yeah, no, happy to, and more than happy to. And again, it fits into partially some of the Zenescope stuff that I sell. It is a risk, it could go one way or the other. I am very open about that. I don't have a problem admitting that. But it is a risk. But I do think that there is potential buyers for it, and I think that there is a way where there's going to be somebody who's a Zenescope fan who can be converted. And it might take 18 months for me to sell. I think it's 15 books. I could be mistaken on that, so nobody quote me on the retail package. But it could take 15, it could take 24 months, but I think I will sell all of them. It's just a matter of, and look, I'm going to make a decent amount of money on it. I'm not getting rich off of it. It's not like I'm going to be buying your book and then pulling in like 100,000 off of it. I want to make that crystal clear. But it is something that I think does connect well with Zenescope fans, because just I have a feeling that there's a few people who are going to appreciate it. But I digress right there. I do want to back out of everything here. I think I hit up all the rewards, and then there's just a path to get everything pretty much as well. And so obviously, though, I do want to talk a little bit about comics and the business of comics. And I am curious because comics are the Wild West right now. There's something going on in comics where I know a bunch of people, and I'm going to throw a name out there, Paul Gomez, where Paul I think is doing a great job. I think he has a pretty good book with Bushy Boo Circus. I don't know, Chuck, did you hear about that book?
You mean that one that I edited? Yeah, I heard a little bit about it.
So you see that's called The Joke, everybody. But it was too easy. It's low hanging fruit. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I like that.
It's low hanging fruit. Anytime I could get a win here, I'm going to take it. But Paul had a really hard time funding, and he's gotten a bunch of books out. And then there's people who I think in comics who have killed it in funding, but they have a really hard time getting their book out. And I think it's a real issue in comics right now, where you have people who are really good at fulfillment, but they struggle to fund it, and sometimes they don't even fund. And then you have the exact opposite, where people know how to fund, but they don't know how to fulfill their books. And I think that creates a problem, because for me as a consumer, and I'm more of a consumer than anything, it's like I don't know who to trust anymore in this space. And then I've been burned so much that I'm turned off, and I can't be the only one, unless I am. And if I am, I'm on an island by myself here. But as a consumer, I've become a lot more picky, and I'm probably going to be picky for the next 2 years because I'm seeing this and I'm experiencing it. I'm curious that you guys feel as creators about that issue, because I think it's a real issue that nobody's talking about.
I mean, I feel, well, first off, I feel like when it comes to this, different people have different strengths. I know people who kill it in retail, just kill it in retail. Then they come to Kickstarter and they get their asses handed to them. And of course, it goes the other way too, where there's other people who couldn't get a book on Diamond if they tried to, but they're just making bank on Kickstarter. And it's different people's strengths and whatnot. As far as the fulfilling concerns is concerned, is it happening? Are there issues? Certainly, of course there are. But I'll tell you, I don't think it's happening as often as it did. And I really believe that more and more the community is finding a way to police itself. Because the thing is that we don't. I mean, look at Shaun's Kickstarter profile. Look at my profile. Look at a lot of our profiles, and you'll see it's not like, oh, we just created one and ran. I think I'm at like 250, 300 books backed. Shaun's over 100, and my wife is over 200, I think. Like, we put our money where our mouths are. And so if you come to, and let's be honest, to our neighborhood, which is Kickstarter, and you don't fulfill, you'll fucking get mentioned. It'll come out. And so, yeah, that it is an issue. It will get mentioned, and people will hear. So I'm not as worried about it, because really I just kind of look around and I go, who can I trust? Who do I think is actually going to put it? It's like speculation with anything else.
Creators have become a lot more vocal in when people get taken advantage of, even to the point where fans of comic books have gone as far as to notice ripoff of other people's work and confiscate that stuff and take it at a convention, walk up to the person
that's a complicated issue, though. That's
and said, "Hey,
complicated issue."
Yeah, say this ain't kosher. You're gonna give me your stuff, and I'm gonna go. You're not doing that anymore." And so, since we have those soldiers within the community, I think it's helped a lot. And so, through Chuck being representative, through the massive amounts of podcasts and stuff that he does, and being a positive force for the community, and then myself for the Indie Comic Conspiracy, which is the page that's geared more towards support and networking, that word is able to get out and that communication does exist. And we've called each other out. And even creators that have had bad experiences with publishers that were not under their own direct name have been able to address situations and say, hey, look, we're going to be responsible. We've taken hits because we threw our hat
eggs into that basket.
Yeah. So I think it's just a matter of the community that we've been able to grow with in the past 5 years, and the growth of social media and people feeling comfortable and speaking out against being done wrong. And now that the people that we started with are becoming, so to speak, indie veterans, they're comfortable, and their successes and the networking that exists allows us to communicate both good and bad features of the indie market.
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting, and obviously I think that maybe I'm just raw to it. Who knows? Because I've been burned on stuff, and what the things that I've been burned on, I don't think people have been called out on it yet, and it's an issue. And I mean, I called out people, and I called out the person, and then they finally did an update about 4 months late when they were supposed to release it, and they still haven't really given an explanation. So I mean, I'm not going to go bless somebody on this show because I don't know who knows who, but it's a problem, and something happened. But what my rule of thumb is that if you're honest with your fans, they're probably going to be more forgiving, even if there's a problem. They have to wait longer. But when your radio silence, I mean, it's a problem. Pat Shan told me something when I interviewed him a while back. He said, the magic words are "I'm sorry" in Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that printing was going to take an extra month. And
I'll
guess
tell
what
you,
happened?
Andrew, we do have a remedy for your predicament. We can draw them in our book, because apparently the moment we include somebody either on our cover or inside the book, man, they kick the bucket. We have our own Death Note theories that exist with the production of our books, man.
Yeah, I have this. Yeah, so in issue 2, we did the cover of Meatloaf. Issue 1.
In issue 1, my grandmother passed away.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And then in issue number 2, go ahead.
Then in issue 2, we did a Meatloaf cover. Meatloaf passed away not too long after that. And actually, is Tim Curry still around?
This much.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Meatloaf passed away, and we did a Meatloaf cover. Then this time around, we did the Neil Adams cover. Before we even got to release it, Neil Adams passed away. So what we're telling you is, if there's any motherfuckers out there you guys don't like, tell us now. We liked Neil. We liked Meatloaf. But if there's any motherfuckers you guys don't want to survive, let us know. We'll do a cover of them. They won't make it 6 months. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're planning on a special tier for issue number 4, our
Just
Death Note homage cover. We'll just take names for an additional amount. We'll just include them on our cover.
And we'll just put them on the cover, and those people aren't going to make it.
They won't even know where it's from, but
Well, now we just pretty much stepped right up to the line of murder. Right up to the line.
It's not murder.
We didn't cross it. We stepped up to it.
Everything else with Team Belial, man. Come on.
Yeah, right? Go big or go home.
Where's the line? Oh, we're going to put 1 foot over while the other one is safely able to jump back.
So now we've done that. I believe that is a perfect place to end. So I'm going to give both of you guys a chance to promote yourself. I was going to ask you 20 more questions, but I think I can't really have a better question than that. And so where can people find the comic, back the comic, check out the comic, have fun with the comic, enjoy the comic, all that fun stuff?
Go ahead, Shaun.
The comic, of course, can be found on Kickstarter presently. When the Kickstarter is done, you can go to instinctcomics.com for any of the backlog of issues, maybe stickers that were available during previous campaigns that maybe you might be interested, stuff like that. I am Instinct on both TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and I am Shaun Barbour on Facebook. And so that's where you can find me, and you can find previous installments and rewards of Belial.
And then for me, I'm Chuck Pineau, Pineau. You can track me down on Facebook. You can track me down on Instagram under those names. On Twitter, I'm at Chucky Pin. And then, of course, I have my YouTube channel, Chuck's Raw Reviews, where you can watch my weekly interview show. Both of these guys have been interviewed on my show, and many, many other people. We've done over 80 shows. Excited to get up to 100 by the end of the year. Making it happen, making the push. And, yeah, man, we got so much stuff going on, and super excited. And thank you so much, Andrew, for having us on. We always love hanging out with you. We really do.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm just going to say it, much like I said at the start of this episode, you have to support indie comics. And what that means is you have to back things financially. These things do not get made without money. As I stated, the C word, and there are many C words that could come to people's minds, but the word that I'm looking for is cash flow. Cash flow. I want to make that crystal clear before I get in trouble and somebody takes it out of context, that it's cash flow is the C word to that.
Andrew said that comics needs cancer.
I thought it was cuddling.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God,
I could use cuddling.
But anyhow, as I was stating, and then before I get in trouble and I walk into something tomorrow that's gonna, get me canceled, pretty much this stuff needs money to be made. You guys, without money, this stuff doesn't get made, and so that is the important thing. So if you can and you like this comic, and if you don't like the comic, and you want to see things get done and you don't want them to see them ended, then you need to support it economically. Furthermore, if you don't like this comic, but you like indie comics as a whole, you need to support those as well. And hell, if you like Disney, I personally don't care if you like corporate comics, independent comics. If you like corporate media, independent media, I'm independent media by definition. You have to support what you like, and that means supporting economically. And so go out and do that. I'm no different. So obviously do that. And also you should be following people on social media. It goes a long way. And then as far as I'm concerned, really going to promote myself as I kind of just tip my hat a little bit. Obviously, if you like this show, you can support this show. I have Buy Me a Coffee. I have merch. I also have an affiliate link for BCW Supplies. Get 10% off your entire order, as well as October 5th, technically should be my class's launch date to learn how to invest in comics. And I'm going to teach you the basics. So that's what I got going on with that. So if you want to take that class, it's going to be on Udemy first. We're looking at a $40 price point for about 18 to 22 hours worth of class, which is a beast of a class. And
Wow.
I don't tell you what books to buy. I tell you what basically the skill set. So there you go right there.
Like what to look for?
What?
Like what kinds of things to look for and keep your eyes out for?
Research. So how to actually do research. All the fun stuff. The different variants that are out there. There's like 35 different variants, by the way. Actually how to calculate a variant ratio, which is a mathematical formula. Because that's a big deal. That's a big issue.
Like 1 in 25s and stuff like that. Yeah.
Actually how to understand how many are out there, and it's not even an exact science because it's actually under that number. It gives you the maximum that could be out there, which it means that it's actually lower. It's super interesting. It's mathematical formula, and you have to do math, but you don't have to memorize the formula because I'm giving you the formula. And then I go through grading. I go through how to build budgets. Sounds, like people don't need it. You'd be surprised. I teach you how to cash flow a budget as well in my class. As I stated, grading, and then I teach you how to make exits and just basic practices of exits and good practices. And it's all module, and it's a bunch of different modules. I think there's like 20 to 22 modules. I'm about 65% recorded right now in my class. So it's coming. It's coming. And this is class 1. I got about another 12 that I'm building.
Wow.
So, yeah, this is like a lifestyle for me. And there's real money to be made. And let's say you're not into this, but you're a collector, this stuff is still relevant, because if you can get something in your collection that normally goes for $60, but you get it for 40, that means you can get more stuff in your collection. So the same rules apply to making money as collecting, because anytime you can get something for less money, you can get more shit. But I digress. On that note, I'm going to let either one of you end the show, and you guys get the final word.
No, man, you are the better pitcher than I am, man.
You motherfucker. Belial, it's here on Kickstarter right now. The original creator of Hell, taking on Death, taking on his big boy Mammon, taking on all comers. Come on out, check it out. We've got so much great stuff for you, and damn, we're excited to hang out with you guys. Issue 3 of 4. We're almost done, guys. Do not miss it. Peace out.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better myself. So everybody, that is a wrap.